Okay, I am not in class today, but you do have the assignment of just kind of looking over your tests. Although some of you might skip over some of the questions that you got correct, I do suggest that you navigate the entire video before moving on. There is information about your first homework assignment of the fourth quarter, which is actually given today. Also remember, again, some of you are required to pass this quarter because you failed the third quarter, and what that means is that the best time to actually start taking my advice is now. Again, there are 4 processes I'm going to introduce you to that are preparing you for bigger topics, and they're also discussed before you're asked to do them on your homework assignment. So I'd also recommend that you watch the videos that are shown as links. These are from the actual textbook. There's no need to take notes, but just to kind of get an idea for what you're getting into. Again, next few weeks and your test is in, or pretty much we're only going to be going over this for 3 weeks. So we are moving. You're expected to know it. You need to make sure you're ready to go. So again, make sure that you are paying attention. Again, we are going to be moving quickly with the same expectation of performance. So again, prepare to succeed now. There is nothing else really to do outside of just go ahead and get ready to knock out this fourth quarter. Many of you took vacation for 10 weeks. Vacation's over. Time to get to work. Every assignment that we have is due May 11th. So again, just make sure that you keep that in mind also. And again, for those of you who are going to wait until the last minute, May 11th is it. Alright. Other than that, what you should have in front of you is your factoring test. And again, if you want to scan through on the questions that you got right and skip over it, that's fine. But some of you need to watch the whole thing. You are taking this test again tomorrow. So again, what we're doing here is, this is factoring specials, which is your perfect squares. But again, this is the factoring form that we have seen. This is the one where I want numbers that multiply to be 121 and add to be negative 22. Funny thing about this, which most of you got the idea, 121 is a very weird number. And so when you look at it, there's not a lot of numbers that go into it. And I don't need to write the tree because of the fact that I've got so much experience with it. As some of you are noticing, again, finding the numbers really shouldn't be the issue. But I think after this one, I'm just going to go ahead and go straight to the number because you're supposed to know how to do this anyway. But again, the numbers are 11 and 11. Because you need a negative 22, it means that the bigger one's negative, which there is no bigger one. But it's positive 121, which means it's both 11s. You are supposed to, if you remember, take this term, ignore the squared, and put it over both numbers. So x over negative 11, x over negative 11, and this converts into your factors. X minus 11 here, x minus 11 here. There is never a negative number first. I don't know how many of you did that on your test, but there's a good amount of you that I have no idea where it came from. The negatives are always going to stay on the bottom of the fraction. That is all you needed to do. Same thing here. 9x squared minus 12x plus 4. I want numbers that multiply to be 36 and add to be negative 12. Again, I will just tell you, because you need to know how to find those numbers on your own, that the numbers are 6 and 6. But again, because 12 is negative, it means that this side would be negative. Positive 36 means that side is negative. And again, you are supposed to take this and put it over both of those. 9x over negative 6, 9x over negative 6. Then you're supposed to reduce it. 9 over 6 is 3 over 2. And so you turn into 3x over negative 2. 3x over negative 2. I think some of you are being so literal, as in like you're really using the calculator too much because you're typing in 3 divided by negative 2, and then you're converting that fraction and you're writing negative 3 over 2. If I already know the bottom number is negative, I don't need to type the negative into the calculator. All I need to know is what the top number is and what the bottom number is. And so, like I said, you got to learn that because, again, factoring is going to be a part of this next chapter, so just be careful. Either way, that should have been 3x minus 2. 3x minus 2. Alright? The next one, number 3, which was your x squared minus 49, that should have been easy enough because this is the one where you're supposed to look at it and say there's no b. There's no x, which means this isn't GCF factoring. This is just perfect square factoring. X squared is x times x. 49 is 7 times 7. And then you make sure you put a different sign in both of those groups. Same thing on 4. I don't see a middle term. I also don't see a variable on the last part there, so therefore here we're looking at 36 is 6 times 6, a squared is 8 times a, 121 is 11. I don't know where we get 18s and things like that, but if you don't know what you're doing, hit second x squared 36, and it will tell you what number you're supposed to do, or hit second x squared 121, and that will tell you what number you're supposed to use. But again, you need to make sure you know what you're doing and adjust your performance to what works, because really this is not a tough test, and some of you actually drop back down into the F range on the last test or the test from yesterday, so you might want to pick that up. X squared minus 20x plus 100. Again, here we're looking for numbers that multiply to be. This is a 3-term problem, trinomial, so we're looking for numbers that multiply to be 100, add to be negative 20. I will just tell you that the numbers are 10 and 10. Again, negative 20 means that's got to be negative. It's a positive 100, so that's got to be negative. We were taught to take this term and put it over both numbers, and that translates into our answer, x minus 10. X minus 10 should have been your answer on that. Alright. That one I don't think gave too many people problems. I mean, there were people who missed it, of course, but like I said, a lot of you gave up on me a long time ago, so I'm not shocked about that. This one caused some issues that it really should not have, and so I expect for you to do better on this tomorrow. Don't forget, GCF means you're pulling out the common factor, and the title of it's GCF, which already tells you all you're doing on these is pulling out the common factor. You are not doing what you just did on the last test. This is simply pulling out the information that everything has in common. And so what I taught you to do is take the two numbers and put them into a fraction, and then make the fraction and determine what the GCF is by doing 30 divided by 5, or first number divided by first number, which tells me that my biggest number is 6. I also am supposed to look at the variables and see if they have anything in common, and remember the lowest amount is 1x. And then I'm supposed to open my parentheses, and all you do from there is you convert every single piece slowly. And so you look at 30 and say 30 divided by 6 turns into 5. X squared, I took off an x, I have one left. Plus sign, copied. 42 divided by 6, 7. X, I took it off, it's gone. That's how simple that is. And again, that's why I ask you to practice, so that you actually get it down to where you can perform it whenever you need to. Same thing on 2, 10, 30, and 6. What I told you on this one was to look at the smallest number and make a tree for that number, and then check them. Well, 6 does not go into 10, 3 does not go into 10, 2 does. It goes into 10 and 30, which means my GCF for this is 2. And then you're supposed to look at these options here and say that the smallest number of z's I can take, or the most z's I can take, is 2, because that's the smallest amount there. And then you open your parentheses, and again you change every single one of these pieces one thing at a time. There is not anything else going on. You simply say t, or 10 divided by 2, turns into 5. 4 z's, I took 2 away, I have 2 left. Minus sign, copied. 30 divided by 2, 15. Z to the third, taking 2 off, leaves me 1. Plus sign, copied. 6 divided by 2, 3. Had 2 z's, took them off. I am done. That is GCF factoring. As you notice, it does not take me a long time to get through it, which is the biggest sign that this is not a tough process. Again, it just takes for you to put some extra time in and do what you're supposed to do, and honestly it gets easy after that. 3 and 15, honestly you should be able to kind of look at 3 and 15 and recognize that the biggest number that goes in is 3, but you don't have to be that good. You could just simply turn 3 and 15 into a fraction, do 3 divided by 1, even if you have to on the calculator, to get the answer of 3. Because 15 does not have an A, I cannot take an A off. And again, this was on the homework, so some of you should have actually seen this, but there's an A here but not here, which means all you can do is take off a 3. You could only take off an A if that had an A to give. So therefore, you're still going to change every piece individually, but not every piece is going to change. 3 divided by 3 is 1. A had nothing happen, so it just comes down, which means I don't really need the 1. Minus comes down. 15 divided by 3 is 5. That is your answer. 20, 10, 15. Again, 10 being the smallest number, I would just do one for 10 and start with the check. 10 goes into these two but does not go into 15. 5 goes into 20, goes into 10, goes into 15. That means my biggest number is 5. Looking at my x's, all of them have an x, but the smallest amount is 1, which means that's what I'm going to take off. And again, I simply go one at a time. 20 divided by 5 is 4. X to the 5th taking 1 off is x to the 4th. Minus gets written down. This is what your eyes are doing as you factor. And like I said, it's not even that tough to do. You just got to take your time. 10 divided by 5 is 2. X to the 4th taking 1 off is x to the 3rd. Minus comes down. 15 divided by 5. 3. I had an x, took it off. I'm done. That is your answer. 5. Yes, they're weird numbers. Who cares? 17 divided by 51. Math. Enter, enter. 17 is going to 1, which obviously means that 17 is my biggest number I can take off. And here you have to recognize that this 6 is only attached to y, which means there's 1x and 2 x's. The most I can take is 1. Here there are 6 y's and 4 y's. The most I can take is 4. Open your parentheses and change every single part. 17 divided by 17 is 1. X has 1, took it off, it's gone. Y to the 6th, had 6, took off 4, I'm left with 2 because I have a variable. I no longer need that 1. Now if there were no variables left, I'd have to leave that 1 there. The plus sign gets copied. 51 divided by 17 is 3. Had 2 x's, took 1 off, left with an x. Had 4 y's, took 4 off, they're gone. That is your answer. Okay? So again, when you do this test, there's different types of factorings. The reason why I felt like I could move, or why we should be able to move, is because the other factorings should have been either mastered or almost mastered. Even on that test that we just went over, this we had been doing for the last 2 weeks or so. So that shouldn't have been an issue. And then the perfect square numbers, I think, are easy enough that you should be able to just get through them. You know what I mean? So, like I said, it's not like I'm expecting anything major out of you. You just have to keep up with what's going on, and like I said, if you aren't keeping up, then you have to accept that responsibility. That's kind of part of growing up. Factoring again, the test that I gave, if you messed up on this, this is the one where you're looking for numbers that multiply to be 6, add to be 7. Again, you have to be able to find those numbers. I'm not going to make the tree because you've been doing that for 3 weeks at least. 1 and 6 are your numbers. Because 7 is positive, 6 is positive. And because it makes a positive 6, it's also a positive 1. You ignore the squared. You put this number over each fraction, which I have seen so many people that aren't even close to doing, which is, like I said, it's going to be an issue. And then this turns into x plus 1 and x plus 6. If it looks extremely simple, it's because, in all honesty, it is extremely simple. You just have to put in the work, you have to ask questions, and you have to trust the fact that I know what I'm doing and that I can actually help you to understand it if you actually give me the opportunity. In this one, multiply to be 40, add to be negative 14. I will just tell you the numbers are 4 and 10. 14 is negative, so 10 is negative. 40 is positive, so that means 4 is negative also because the sign should be the same. We ignore the squared. We look at the first term. We put this over both numbers. You end up with n minus 4, n minus 10. The ease of doing this is it amazes me how many people can do the last test on the page and then they mess up on this test. Well, if you're doing the last test on the page by putting the fraction over the number, all you have to do, honestly, is just take this number and put it here, take this number and put it there on these. But like I said, not on the one where there's a number in front. But for those of you who have been working with it enough, once you find the numbers, you notice the negative 4 goes here, the negative 10 goes there, and that's it. Notice the plus 1 goes here, the plus 6 goes there. That's it. But again, if you're wanting me to teach you that, I can't teach you the common sense part. I can't teach you how to observe. I can only say, you know, if you've been sitting and watching someone drive for 16 years, you should be able to know that when a light turns green, it's time to go and not have to read notes. You know what I mean? Like, there's certain things you have to kind of learn from observation, and that's one of those things. So please start trusting yourself. Please start paying attention to what's going on. Like I said, I don't care if you find a shorter way to do it. The part for me is whenever you're using a process that's completely different, or showing zero work at all. Notice I'm still showing this part, which at least shows you that I'm using the process. Multiplies to be negative 28, adds to be negative 12, I believe, are 2 and 14 in the end. Negative 12 means that has to be negative. That's negative, which means this has to be positive. Notice that times that is negative 28, and when you add them, you get negative 12. Again, from here, using my observation, I could just assume it's x plus 2, x minus 14, but using the process, put the x over each number, and then translate however you want to do it. I don't care. Just learn to get it right. There has to be a certain point in your career where you start actually working on your own and taking some pride in what you're doing, and you're now pretty much sophomores to me, so be careful. Again, I have a lot of students who took my class before. Multiply to be negative 16, adds to be 6, that'll be positive 8, and negative 2, but they took the class before and they struggled kind of like you did, and they never made the change. And now that they are juniors and they're in algebra 2, it's amazing how many issues they're having, and not because they're not smart enough to get it, but because their habits are just bad. Like, at some point you have to accept that you are responsible for what you do. X minus 2, x plus 8 should have been your answers on that one. And then the one that we have talked about a few times, which is the one where I said you ignore all the letters. Multiplies to be 63, adds to be 16. Those numbers are 7 and 9. It's a positive 63, positive 16, which means both of those are positive. I told you to do the process the same as if this last letter was not there, so I told you to put v over 7, v over 9, and that you simply had to make the adjustment by putting this letter at the end. So v plus 7d and v plus 9d. Again, that was discussed, that was taught, that was practiced in front of you. I don't know what else I can do, honestly, to help you get there, but you'll be okay. That didn't cause anybody to fail. The problem is when these are missed. If you're missing the easy ones, that's a big issue. But, it's your fight. You'll figure it out. Number 1, on this third one, which is where a is not equal to 1, that means that you have a front number. Again, this is the one where you can't take the shortcut of simply taking the numbers and putting them there. Here I want numbers that multiply to be 48, add to be 19. I think it's 3 and 16. With a positive 16, positive 3, and again, you ignore the squared, take this piece, put it over both parts. Reduce both numbers. I'm not going to use my calculator to do it because I don't need it. 6 and 3 can both be divided by 3, which turns into 2x over 1. These both can be divided by 2, which turns into 3x over 8. And again, you then convert it into the fraction form by doing that. This was on a worksheet with a whole bunch of things for you to practice. And again, if you didn't practice it, I cannot take the blame for you not knowing how to factor this stuff. So pick it up. Like I said, you've got one more quarter to make it so you don't have to take this class over again. And I'm not talking to the people who just made a few mistakes. I'm talking to the people who seriously have done nothing. Negative 24, add to be negative 5. Those numbers are 3 and 8. Again, after making your tree, you might have to do that. Negative 5 means put the negative on the 8. Negative 24 means that's positive. Ignore the squared. Take this term, put it over both numbers. Reduce. These both divide by 3, so it'll be 4x over 1. These both divide by 4, so it'll be 3x over negative 2. You then convert these two into the factored form. Again, I still have people who aren't even converting the form back, which is shameful. I mean, you've been doing this for 4 weeks, 3 weeks. You should know what the answer is going to look like, not just write me some stuff that looks like this in parentheses. That is honestly just not good. It tells me the truth. Multiplies to be 100, adds to be 29 is 4 and 25. Again, positive here, positive there. Ignore the squared. Take this number, 10y over 4, 10y over 25. These both divide by 2, so it's 5y over 2. These both divide by 5, so it's 2y over 5. I also, again, hope that you know that you had to know how to reduce them using your calculator. So you can reduce those on your own. I'm just not going to take 20 minutes on these to work them out. I am just trying to show you some things in terms of what you did wrong so you can do better tomorrow. 5y plus 2, 2y plus 5, that is it. Alright. This one here, you were looking for numbers that multiply to be negative 10, add to be 9, that would be 1 and 10 with a positive 10 because that's positive, and a negative 1 because it multiplies to make a negative. Again, ignore that. Take this term, 2x over negative 1, 2x over 10. That does not reduce. This both reduces by 2, and so you leave it to x over 5. And so your answers are 2x minus 1 and x plus 5. And then the last thing, first off, it used the phrase factor completely. And I know that most of you don't like to pay attention to the directions, and that's a bad habit, but I didn't do it either, I understand. Like I said, and I made some of the mistakes you're making. The difference is whenever I messed up to a level of getting an F on a test or a D on a test, I took it kind of personal. I made the change. So that's where I don't have any sympathy for you if you put yourself in that position. But at some point I had to learn to kind of really pay attention, because the higher you get, the fewer mistakes you can make. I want you to imagine a doctor that doesn't read directions, or a plumber that doesn't follow directions, or anybody who's in a professional field that does not follow directions. It doesn't end well. So at some point you have to kind of step up into that level of being serious enough. And I told you that when you see factor completely, that it actually means there's probably a number in all three of these. Notice 5 comes out of all these. And so you were supposed to take out the 5 and rewrite it as 3x squared minus 5x minus 2. And then you were supposed to factor this, which was multiplies to be negative 6, adds to be negative 5. Those numbers are, I believe, 1 and 6, with a negative 6 and a positive 1. Again, taking this number here, 3x goes over 1. Notice I have not taken my finger off of that number yet. 3x goes over negative 6. That does not reduce. This reduces to bx over negative 2. I put this into my answer, 3x plus 1, x minus 2. Now, as I told you before, you simply bring down your 5 to finish it off. Alright? So that is your test, but again, that's not the end of what's going on. There are a few things we need to discuss before you get to your homework. And again, don't rush through your homework. You'll have plenty of time to do these. Plus, what you'll recognize is that this stuff really doesn't take that long. I just need to introduce it to you so you have something to behind you to actually find these answers. And again, if you haven't been getting 100% on your homework, I honestly can't tell you anything, but if you're not getting 100% on homework, how do you expect to do well on the test when these questions are on your test? By the way, these are all quiz questions on this sheet, so make sure you understand them. All you have to do this is, it says negative b over 2a. This negative simply means opposite of, and so what you do is you simply take negative parentheses, and honestly, whenever you plug them into the equations or formulas, just make sure you use parentheses. So negative 70 over 2 parentheses negative 5. Simple to do. You simply use your parentheses everywhere. Negative 70 turns into 70. 2 times negative 5 turns into negative 10. And then you do 70 divided by negative 10 to get the answer of negative 7. That is all you're asked to do. Memorize this formula, by the way. Negative b over 2a needs to be memorized, so make sure you might want to start doing that now. I'll tell you when to use it Thursday, but like I said, this needs to be memorized at some point, so just be ready for that. B squared minus 4ac when a equals all this stuff. Again, the best advice, use parentheses. Negative 6 squared minus 4 parentheses negative 2 parentheses 10. Type it in the way you see it. Parentheses negative 6 squared minus 4 parentheses negative 2 parentheses 10. Close. Your answer is 116. Here's the problem. As easy as this is, most of you don't like to listen to me, and so you are going to type and look carefully. Negative 6 squared minus 4 parentheses negative 2 parentheses 10, because you think you know it all, and you're going to get the wrong answer. So what I am telling you is, if I'm telling you to use parentheses on every letter, use parentheses on every letter, it will work. If you don't use parentheses on every letter, I can't do anything to help you, and so I won't. Again, follow the directions, do what you're supposed to do, it will work. You're also going to be asked to evaluate something like this, which is just a complex fraction. And again, what I suggest is that you type the top and hit enter. The reason is because if you type 3 plus this divided by that, order of operations is going to do that first. And since this is a group at the top, hitting enter stores this answer. So what you're going to do is you're going to type 3 plus square root of 35 equals. And again, what this does is it stores that value, whatever this answer is, in your computer's memory. Then you hit divided by, and you immediately hit divided by. You don't even type that, you just hit divided by, and you see ANS. ANS is again the calculator's memory storage for whatever your last answer was. Well, there's a big ugly number in memory that represents what was at the top, and that's what you wanted to be divided by, -2. And so it's going to ask you to round to the nearest hundredth. The computer might give you some issues on your rounding, but just make sure you practice it. But it's only going to count if you put it right. Because this is 458, it wants -4.46. So again, just work on that. But let me just show you what happens when you do it wrong. 3 plus, and again, I'm sure somebody's going to do this, plus square root 35 divided by -2. First off is an error because this throws off everything. Second off, even if you do it the right way, 3 plus square root 35 close parentheses divided by -2, it still gives you the wrong answer. So again, please follow the directions. Whenever you see this, type the top, hit enter, then hit divided by whatever is on the bottom. You're going to need this soon, sooner than you think, and you need to be decent at it before it pops up. The last thing that is a calculator, or a process part that you need to know is this plus or minus. The way you work out a plus or minus is you do what I call going over the bridge and call going under the bridge. And so what you do to work this out, this is just two symbols. It represents two numbers. So you literally type over the bridge -10 plus square root of 3, which reduces or converts to be 8.27. And then you go under the bridge, which means you type -10 minus square root of 3, which converts to be -11.73. So really much the plus or minus sign is math's way of writing two numbers without having to put two different things. If the only thing different is the plus sign, minus sign. Alright. The last thing you're going to be asked to do is to graph. And so let me go over this graphing thing. I think we graphed before on this part, and so you want to make sure you know what's going on. In order to graph, first off, the best thing you can do is to reset your memory, which means first off I would do second plus, which brings up the memory function or memory menu. Reset, which is 7. You want everything removed, which is 1, and yes, you want to reset, which is 2, and then it clears the RAM for you. The second thing you want to remember is that everything, even though that's f of x, that's the same as y, and you want to hit the y equals button because that brings up all of your stuff. And then all you have to do honestly is type it in. So 3x squared minus 2 means hit your 3. Remember that x is this button here with the xt theta. Again, it is this button here with the xt theta in. Squared is still your x squared button. Again, everything else types in the way it is, minus 2. And the way you view that graph is to hit the graph button over here. Please make sure you do that for yourself. And pretty much on this computer assignment, all you're going to be asked to do is select the one that is the image. It's multiple choice. And so if you look at this graph and you look at what's going on, it's not that hard to do. You just got to make sure you understand this is narrow. What they will do is they will give you a extremely wide graph, or a graph that goes upside down, or a graph that's in a whole different location. So you just have to learn how to pick the one that's there. But again, you get 3 choices to pick it. Just make sure you get better at it to where you don't take 3 choices, because that's going to be on your quiz, and of course on your quiz you only get 1 guess. here f of x equals negative x squared. So go back to your y equals, clear that out by hitting clear, and just hit your negative. Again, x is this button, and then squared, graph it. And again, I'm not getting into the details because the lesson isn't there yet, but I am trying to get you ready for the race that you're about to run for this next couple weeks, making sure you're aware of what's going on. Again, you just pick the one that looks like that. That's all you have to do. And then I guess I didn't give you a third one. So that would be it. Other than that, like I said, just make sure you're ready to go. Pay attention to what's going on. I think you should be able to finish that assignment. You still, even if you watched the video and just flat out watched it without writing anything down, you still got about 20 minutes left. I honestly think you could probably finish this in close to 20 minutes, or come close to finishing in 20 minutes if you focus and don't mess around. Just know, again, tomorrow you're taking the 2 factoring tests, and you're probably going to take not the last 2 factoring tests, but something else, because I'm trying to help people, or trying to give some people a last minute effort to get their 58s up to a 60. So I'm going to find out what graphs or what tests I'm going to put on there. But like I said, other than that, just go ahead and get to work. I'll see you tomorrow.